one person can walk away. I mean, if they're in different spaces, one person can say this conversation is over.
Right.
And I sometimes say the smarter one of the two of you will end the conversation.
Ah, that's good. That challenges them.
So I give a little positive challenge. And people kind of laugh when I say that. And I said, look, one of you's got to be smarter than the others. End this because it's not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Work, it just, you go down a rabbit hole and it gets worse.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens like with nasty texts. I mean, I have so many issues where people send each other nasty texts or emails and name calling and all these horrible things, denigrating the other parent. So I make a rule and I say, if you get a nasty text from the other partner, delete it and send back another text that says, please send information about the child only.
Hi, I'm Rachel Green, Brooklyn-based divorce mediator and collaborative attorney, and this is my podcast, Keep the Kids in Mind. Join me as I chat with other industry professionals about everything from smoothly navigating your way through divorce to prenups, all the while keeping the kids in mind.
Hello, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. We're very lucky today to have Dr. Barbara Rothberg joining us. She is a very experienced therapist, couples therapist, mediator, child specialist, and parenting coordinator. And Barbara, did I leave anything out?
I wear a lot of hats.
She wears a lot of hats. And not only that, she's one of the first people who did a true joint custody schedule with her own children. And I know one of them because she's a divorce mediator. So welcome, Barbara. We're thrilled to have you join us here on Keep the Kids in Mind.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I'm happy to be here.
So just to start, I guess I'm wondering if there's anything you'd like to share about what brought you to this work of working with families who are going through transitions, separating, divorcing, and trying to keep their kids in mind.
Well, you gave me the segue. I was divorced, 30 some odd years ago when I had two young children. And in those days, joint custody was not something that was typical. There weren't a lot of mediators around, as you know.
Right.
And I was married to a lawyer. He was not a matrimonial attorney, but he was a lawyer. And we were very reasonable. And we decided we wanted a divorce. And we had what they call today is a kitchen table divorce. But we literally sat down at the kitchen table and we started deciding what we wanted.
And I guess in those days, people just felt like, oh, the kids have to stay with the mom, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those were much more the kids have to stay with the mom. However, I was one of the people who was early involved in the women's movement and with feminism. I had two young children and I decided I shouldn't change every diaper and that my husband should do some too. And he agreed and he wanted to be part of raising the kids.
Which is so nice for you and the kids.
And the kids, exactly.
And him.
Exactly. So this is a win-win for everyone.
Right.
So because of the women's movement, and I really credit the women's movement, and my then saying to him, I want you involved with the kids. He said, oh, that's a good idea. Let's try it.
Yeah.
So he got very involved. So we decided to split up. He was a very involved parent. And there was no way he was going to let me have the kids all the time. And I felt like that.
Your kids have really strong relationships with both of you now.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah, which is so wonderful.
Absolutely.
It's really a model for how I think many families aspire to succeed, the way that you have. So that's wonderful that you're working with those families directly.
Well, I think that the best way to choose work really comes from what's inside and what's your personal need and personal interest. And when I was doing a dissertation many, many years ago, I sat with my dissertation advisor and I was trying to figure out a topic. And he said to me, well, what's important to you? And I had recently separated from my husband, had two little kids. And I said, I think custody mediation. And I never heard of divorce mediation in those days. And I did a dissertation on custody mediation.
Wow.
trying to look at joint custody. This was the early 80s. So my husband and I sat down and we figured out a schedule that we thought would work. And we never went to a divorce attorney.
Yeah.
And we worked out a divorce. And it worked very well. And we're still friends all these years later. And my children spend time with both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter, as you say, is a divorce mediator. She kind of got it and understood it. And it worked for us and it worked for the kids. And I do this work honestly. So sometimes I share the story with clients and I say, I'm trained to do this work professionally, but I also care about it personally.
You trained both personally and professionally.
Because I really care and I want kids to be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the name of your podcast because that's the goal. We want the kids to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I find that's what really, gets to me in this work too.
Absolutely.
Is trying to help people to remember their kids and think about how this is impacting their kids and try to help them, help their kids come through as strong as possible.
Absolutely.
I had a couple who came in for mediation and they said, is this going to affect our kids? And I was like, yeah, it's going to affect them. The question is, I mean, this is going to be a big thing in their lives. They're going to look at their childhoods as a before and after. But the question isn't really, is it going to affect them? It's whether you can help them to process everything, have the feelings they have, still love both of you, still spend time with both of you, and then they'll come through, feeling okay and surviving and thriving and it will just become one of those things that happened to them when they were kids, but they'll be okay.
It's how it'll affect them. Of course it will affect them, but it's how, and as you say, it's helping them process in it a way. And if parents can get along, then the kids will be okay.
So I guess I'm interested in, I'm always interested in hearing stories about individual families, but I guess also I want to talk about your work as a parent coordinator. And maybe you can tell our audience, a little more about what parenting coordination is and how you got into it and what are the things that you love about that work, because I know you've been gravitating toward doing more and more of working as a parent coordinator, and I think it's very challenging work, and you are particularly good at it. So I think that part of your practice is growing because you are a leader in that field as well. So
thank you, Rachel. I think parent coordination is a process to help separating or separated. Sometimes the process begins when people aren't yet divorced. So it's separating or separated parents who are in conflict, help them figure out their relationship, work through a new relationship. And what I like to say is change the relationship from spouse to co-parenting.
That's very interesting.
But it's a forever relationship. And people come to me and I say, you are forever connected. Because you had children together and you're getting a divorce, this doesn't mean you're not talking to each other. I had someone who had 2 kids who were 3 and 5, and they said, well, we're finished with each other. I said, I don't think so. You have 2 kids who are 3 and 5. You are forever connected. What schools will your children go to? What's going to happen when they want one activity and the other one wants another? What happens when there's conflict? You are forever connected. So my goal as a parent coordinator is twofold. First, the priority of what's best for your children. And secondly, how to help the parents get along well enough to be the best possible parents for the kids.
So I that's really interesting to say, instead of their relationship is ending, it's changing. They used to be spouses and or love partners, but now they're going to be co-parents.
And I talk about it sometimes as it's a business relationship. It's the business of co-parenting, and you're in a business partnership.
I read something once that said that the conversation between parents at pickups and drop-offs should be like a pizza delivery. Like you open the door, you say, "Thank you very much. Have a good evening." Close the door.
Well, I think that's interesting. It's a great analogy. I'm gonna remember that. And I think for high conflict parents, I think that's great. I think there are other parents who are able to have real conversations and say, "How you doing? What's going on?" I know some parents will say, "Come on in, have a cup of coffee."
Are
And
the
if
children just like fascinated, like wanting to watch the parents together?
most
You know what I
children
mean?
do very, very well
Yeah.
because they see their parents are friendly, respect each
Oh,
other. Every parent can't do it. But those that can, I encourage it because then we're all family. And I talk about there's a concept in my therapy field called the binuclear family.
hmm,
Family doesn't dissolve. It just becomes different. It's not nuclear, it's binuclear with two households.
that's interesting.
But you're still family.
Right. And from the children's perspective, that's certainly true. I mean, these are the two parents these children have, and they will never have any other two parents. So
That's, well, they might have three or
they
four of
might
them.
have, right, that's
It
right. They
shouldn't be
might have
twice
other
that.
parents, but they're still going to have these two.
These are the two primary parents.
Right.
And they will have two primary parents forever. And if parents can get along and have a cup of coffee and have a real conversation, the kids feel comfortable. And that's nice.
He works as well.
If they can't, then the pizza delivery is a great analogy.
Yeah.
And I have never said that, but I really like it. And I usually say to parents, say hello, give the kid a hug hello or a hug goodbye. See you next week. See you in 3 days, whatever your schedule might
Right.
be.
Have a good
Don't
weekend.
talk. And don't talk, exactly.
Right.
If you're going to get in conflict, don't talk. One of the biggest rules is don't have conflict in front of the children.
Hmm. So have you been able to help parents who have been in the habit of having conflict to stop themselves and walk away? I mean, I've tried to tell people have a safe word, you say pineapple, and that means we're going to stop this conversation. But sometimes people can't help themselves.
Well, sometimes it's a matter of self-control, and some people don't have a lot of good self-control. It's absolutely true. But I think a safe word is always helpful. If one person can walk away. I mean, if they're in different spaces, one person can say this conversation is over.
Right.
I sometimes say the smarter one of the two of you will end the conversation.
Ah, that's good. That challenges them.
So I give a little positive challenge. And people kind of laugh when I say that. And I said, look, one of you's got to be smarter than the others. End this because it's not helpful.
Hmm.
Work. It just, you go down a rabbit hole and it gets worse.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens like with nasty texts. I mean, I have so many issues where people send each other nasty texts or emails and name calling and all these horrible things, denigrating the other parent. So I make a rule and I say, if you get a nasty text from the other partner, delete it and send back another text that says, please send information about the child only. So
Yeah.
whatever information was in there around the child does not get answered.
Uh-huh.
And if
That's great.
they want the information, they have to send back a text with not you horrible person or you did this or you did that or whatever names they're calling them, and just say, I'm coming later next week or whatever day, whatever information they want to impart.
And have you found that to be a successful technique?
That's been a really good tool. People like it because they can go delete. They press
Right.
delete.
As soon as they read something that they find offensive,
Correct.
they press delete and say,
Please.
send me, right, just send me whatever you need me to know.
Right.
And nothing else.
And nothing else.
Right. I've had a handful of cases where I performed that role, where people sent their emails to me and then I sent it on to the other person. But it's very time consuming and
well, Rachel, I applaud you. I wouldn't want that job, so I don't take that on.
Yeah, no, it's it's kind of astonishing how much anger and hurt there can be when a long-term relationship is ended and
Mhm.
that they can't stop saying, I'm hurting, I'm hurting, I'm hurting. But the way they say I'm hurting is, you asshole, you did this to me,
Yeah.
you blah, 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 you always blah, blah, blah.
If you
And
didn't do X, then we wouldn't be in this situation.
right, exactly. And then and then you do try, like when you delete all that out, and then it comes to, it goes from 4 paragraphs to 3 sentences
That's right.
of what they really are trying to say to the other person. Um, it's kind of, it's amazing, but it's so much psychic energy to
Mhm.
hold on to that
Yes.
pain and that anger.
Mhm.
And it really, they'll be so much better off if they could try to let it go. And it's so painful when it's a breakup like that. And yet, I mean, they're entitled to their pain
Sure.
because they experienced just a lot of loss, and their lives are going in a direction they, sometimes they didn't initiate it, they didn't
Mhm.
ask for it, and people say it's not fair, and they're right. It's not fair. But things happen in life. I mean, sometimes people die young. That's
Mhm.
not fair either. It's not what you expected. It's not what you hoped for, but it happened.
One of the things I do in these situations is I refer people to therapists. If I find they're hurting a lot or they can't maintain self-control, they're really having a hard time with it, I'll refer them to therapists and say,
Yeah,
I think you really need to work on this issue.
yeah.
And in terms of you going over all the emails and all the texts, I mean, what a big job. Um, and I think one of the other issues around that is I want them to learn for themselves. I don't want to be in their lives forever. Uh,
Yeah.
so, and it is a thankless job and so tedious, as you said. So if they delete it and they learn to communicate better, you're teaching them a tool.
Right. And if they can learn to do that themselves, they can write the email and not send it till the next day.
Oh, that's a
Because
great.
when they reread it.
Yep.
I mean, I use that tool myself when, somebody makes me angry and I'm like, right at the typewriter, typing, typing.
Keep
And then
it a
I
draft.
say, okay, time to leave this as a draft,
Uh-huh.
read it tomorrow.
Right.
And it usually works.
That means you have self-control, Rachel, and a lot of our clients don't, especially
Well,
when they're in the throes of a divorce and upset.
yeah, but I mean, I think it also helps me to write it out and get it
Mhm.
out. Like I have self-control that I'm not pressing send,
Right.
but I still need to write it.
That's part of a great process, though, and that's a good process to teach clients.
Mhm. Right, because experiencing your feelings it seems to me that it's the key. I mean, it's also the key for helping children.
Yep.
I talk to parents often about loyalty conflicts,
Mhm.
that when they're with mom, they
Mhm.
miss dad. They
Mhm.
feel a little guilty toward mom because they're enjoying being with mom, but they're missing dad.
Mhm.
And when they're with dad, they're missing mom. And they feel a little guilty toward dad because they're missing mom. And if you can say to your kid, of course are you missing mom right now? You want to call mom and tell her the fun you had on the playground, or it's like a gift to say it's normal. The way you're feeling is normal. You
Mhm.
can tell me, you don't have to hide it from me. I think that's one of the keys. I mean, I'm not a therapist, but
But you got it right.
also that's one of the keys toward helping your children.
Absolutely.
Is to, yeah,
And what you're really saying is you're validating their feelings,
right.
letting them have their feelings so they know it's okay. And if one parent can say it's okay to miss the other parent and we both love you, then the children will feel not in the middle because the major problem and the major thing I talk about in parent coordination is the rule number one is never put your kids in the middle. And what that means is never ask the kid, well, what did you do with mommy? And who else came along when you went to the
Right.
playground? And when you were with daddy, did he call anybody? Did you hear him on the telephone? I mean, you never ever want to ask your child who the other parent spoke to or what they did, or because this makes the child extremely uncomfortable. So you never want to pump them for information. And you never want to use them for tell your father to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Tell your mother to blah, blah, blah. You never want to have them be the source of information. You need to directly talk to your ex.
Yeah. Because that makes the children feel like twisted in knots. Like they feel like they have to take care of mommy and take care of daddy. And it's like, it's too much burden to put on them.
Yeah. And they don't know what's right because they might hear one thing from mom and one thing from dad. Or, when they have two parents who say different things, they don't know what's right.
Yeah, I have a couple right now who's just embroiled in this fighting over the father's new girlfriend meeting the mother.
Mm.
And the father has a new girlfriend, and I don't think they're living together, but she's definitely spending nights when the child is at his home. And I know he's gone out and left her, she's 4, and left the child with the girlfriend for a couple hours at a time. And I think, honestly, I don't understand why the father is hesitating. I think he thinks the mother wants to badmouth him to the new girlfriend. And the mother is saying that she just wants to meet the new girlfriend because the child is talking about the new girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And she just feels like she should know somebody who her daughter is spending time with.
I agree.
Which I agree too.
I always advocate the new partners meet the exes because not knowing is always scarier than knowing. And if your child comes home saying, such and such came over for dinner last night and played with me and I had such a good time, the first thing is like, who is this person playing with my child? And you want to understand, you want to know, because this person is going to be in your child's life.
Right.
So it's helpful. And I always encourage them to meet the people and feel more comfortable and spend a little time, go meet at Starbucks, have a cup of coffee and get to know the person. And oftentimes that happens and makes relationships better.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. This father really just, he just doesn't seem to get it. And we were talking about, I have a line in my, a sentence in my agreement. I have a line that I feed people that says, if you're going to bring another person to an event of the child's, like school play or sports game, you tell the other parent first, just give them the heads up.
Sure.
I'm going to be bringing somebody so that, so that there's not surprise. I mean, that's the sentence that I have in my agreement.
Sounds like a good sentence.
Thank you. This dad said, no way. Am I signing something that says I have to ask her opinion? I have to know. I have to get her permission.
It's not
before I ask, before I bring somebody to my child's school play. I said, I kind of like lost my temper. I mean, also he only communicates with me on text, which, do you think that texting increases conflict? Because I don't know, people toss off texts on their phones, with their thumbs. Mm-hmm. And it's a shorter communication and it's easier to have misunderstandings. But anyway, I lost my temper on text. I said, this is not about you. This is about your daughter. This is so that you or your ex don't suddenly become so distracted because you're shocked because somebody new walked into the auditorium, so that you can't even concentrate on your child's play or your child's sports game or your child's swim meet or your child's chess match or whatever it is that your child does. Mm-hmm. It's to protect your child so that she has her two parents focused on her and not on what the two of you are doing with each other. He just doesn't get it at all.
Just to backtrack a little on this, the other thing that's really important is to talk about when to introduce a new partner into a relationship, because it's really important not to immediately bring somebody new into a situation, because very often I've had situations where somebody starts dating someone crazy about this new person. They've been together for 6 weeks. I can't wait till you meet my kid. and they're really excited. And then 2 months later, they break up because it wasn't working. And the child then gets attached to this new person. So I always explain, for the child's sake, you need to be in a solid relationship for a minimum of 6 to 8 months and feel like it's going to be a long-term relationship before you introduce your child. And this is not punitive. Somebody said to me I was being punitive and favoring the wife when I said this. I said, no, I'm favoring your child. Because if your child gets connected to this person and then you decide to break up, which is certainly your right, then your child has another loss again after being divorced. So let's protect the kids. And when you think it's going to be a long-term relationship, of course, there's no guarantee, but you need to think it's going to be long-term. Then you introduce your child and you let your ex know, I'm introducing my child to my new partner. So the ex knows. So when the child comes, I'm talking about mommy or daddy has a new partner.
Right. You know,
Exactly. You don't go, oh my God, I didn't know that.
and then the child feels like, oh, I made a mistake. I told mommy something that upset her. I shouldn't have said that. And they take it on themselves.
And then daddy will be mad at me and mommy will be mad at me.
Yeah.
I also just noticed that I'm talking very much in terms of mommies and daddies. We also work with same-sex
Oh,
couples.
of course.
And sometimes it's mommies and sometimes
Right.
it's
Of course.
I just want to make a point.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I'm glad you said that. Remind all of us.
Mhm.
Families look different in 2022 than they did in
Absolutely.
1952.
Absolutely. Well, they're probably that way in 52 also, but they weren't out.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, I thought being gay was just recently invented, wasn't it?
Well, I think the Greeks were talking about that. That was before our time, Rachel.
I guess so. Well, I have two queer daughters, so I am very well aware of
Okay.
the many faces of families in
Mhm.
these days.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, and all of them can keep their kids in mind if they're going
Absolutely.
through transitions, because kids have the same needs.
You know, we're talking about parents warring with one another. And when I have a couple who is really in conflict, I tell a really bad story, which was a case of mine many years ago. There was a child who was having high school graduation, and her parents were so angry at each other that she knew they couldn't both be in the auditorium at the same time for her graduation. So they were debating who was going to go. So they asked her, they put her in the middle, and they said, who do you want to come to graduation, mom or dad? Which
Oh my
I was
God.
horrified they did this to
Yeah.
her. Did you know what happened? She said, I'm not going.
Oh.
And this poor kid missed her high school graduation because her parents couldn't get it together to sit in the auditorium. They didn't have to sit together. They could have
Right.
sat on different sides, but
Yeah.
they couldn't get it together to resolve this. Not even with me. They couldn't get it together. And this is one of the worst cases I've ever had.
That's really astonishing, because you would think that they could sit on opposite ends of the auditorium. I mean, they don't even have to talk to each other. Like, what? I mean, did they think they would start shouting across the auditorium?
I suggested that, and you know what they told me? Well, then who is she going to say hello to first when she comes into the audience?
Oh, that poor kid. Oh my God.
So I said, why does it matter?
Yeah,
She'll say hello to whichever aisle she comes down, that person will be first.
right.
You know, it's
It's
not
almost like they feel like there's not enough love for both parents.
so sad.
Yeah.
This child missed her high school graduation. And I tell that to parents. I said, do you want this to happen to your child?
Yeah.
So sometimes telling a bad story will scare somebody and say, you don't want to do this to your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend whose parents divorced actually when she was 22. I
Mm.
mean, I think it's one of the situations where they stay together for the sake of the kid, but she feels like they shouldn't have stayed together.
That never worked.
She eloped because she couldn't imagine her parents
Wow.
in the same room if she had a wedding.
How sad.
It's really sad. And then they came to their granddaughter's high school graduation, and that was the first time they had seen each other for 30 years.
Wow.
But they were able, at that point, after 30 years, they were able to be cordial and well behaved at their granddaughter's graduation. But
Well, I guess it's better late than never, but look at all
Yeah.
the opportunities they missed. My ex-husband and I went to Grandparents' Day for one of our grandchildren, and we met, and we walked in together, went to the classroom. Nobody had known we'd been divorced for, you know, decades.
Right.
We just walked in friendly, and everybody thought we were the grandparents, which we were.
Right. Right. Which you were and still are. And
And it was just a lovely experience, and the
yeah.
kids, the kids were very happy to see us, and
Yeah. So is there other advice that you give? I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of the important things about separating parents and, letting your child have their own feelings, letting them miss each other, letting them love both of you, telling them when you have a new partner, not introducing new partners too early, so that you're protecting your child from a further loss of a person, protecting them from getting attached to someone who's not going to be in your life for a long term. Um, are there any other things that we didn't touch on
the
that?
other yeah,
Yeah.
there is something else. I try to talk with parents about having more or less the same rules in each household.
Oh, that's interesting.
And what I mean by that, let's say one parent is a super health food nut, and there's no sugar, there's no this, there's no that, and the other parent has the child eat whatever you want, they eat a box of cookies. The child doesn't know children look to parents for guidance. What's right? How should I live my life? So I think it's very confusing for children if they're very opposite views. If in one house they have no bedtime, and in the other house they have a very strict bedtime, and a parent gets mad at them if they don't get into bed by X time. So it doesn't have to be exact, but I think children do better with more or less the same rules in each household. And that goes for food. Sugar is a big one. For bedtime, for media time. I can't tell you how many hours I spend discussing. They were on watching TV or on an iPad all day long, and I only have an hour a day. Um, and then I had one child say to me, because I'm trained as a child inclusive mediator, and I often bring kids into parent coordination sessions, which is also interesting if it's a tremendous conflict. And one parent says the child wants to do X, the other one said no, the child wants to do Y. I'll do a session with the child to try to assess what does the child really want to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
and then I
What
get
age children would you start to do that with?
6.
Oh, really? That
Done
young?
them with young kids. I had a situation with a 7-year-old that was very overscheduled. A lot of parents now are very overscheduled with their children. And one of the parents wanted the child to have baseball, soccer, music. I mean, there was so many things going on. And the other parent said, no, it's too many things. And let's pick 2 instead of 4.
Right.
So I said, what does your child like? Does your child want music classes? Does your child like baseball? Well, he
And
likes
the
yeah,
parent who wanted all the activities probably said, "My child loves all of it."
exactly. And the other one says, no, he does not want to take piano lessons anymore. He doesn't like it. Yes, he does. He loves it. So I said, how about if I meet your child? So I did an interview with the child and just started talking about what do you do in school and what do you like, and asked general questions. And I never put a child in the middle. What's the most fun activity that you do? I asked those kind of general questions. And I ascertained that he really doesn't like piano lessons, and he
Hmm.
really hates it and feels pressured and doesn't want to do it, and his mom makes him, and etc. So then I was able to give some feedback.
Yeah.
And I talk about it's not that I'm favoring the other parent. I'm looking at what does your child like.
Yeah.
We have to respect children.
Right.
So sometimes that's very helpful to bring the children in.
Yeah.
And then you have the same kind of rules in each house. You don't have to practice every day. The other parent said, I can't make him practice piano if he hates it. I won't do it when he tells me he
Right.
hates
Right. Well, I've had situations where parents have said, "All right, so he'll practice at my house and not at your house." And it's still going to be 3 times a week that he'll practice. And if he really loves piano, eventually he'll want to practice more. But at least to start, if I don't know, because I guess some years ago I took a training in in high conflict parenting.
Mhm.
And one of the things they said was your parenting stops at the other's front door, just to try to minimize parents criticizing each other.
Mhm.
So I'm interested in hearing your work with families to try to have similar rules in both households, because that is the opposite of
It depends
saying,
on how high conflict the couple is.
right.
And if you're doing parallel parenting where there's such high conflict and they could barely talk with one another,
Right.
then you don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. So that you have to just say the kids will manage, they'll figure it out. They know what they do at dad's house, they know what they do at mom's house. They know what they do at papa's house, and they know what they do at daddy's house.
Right.
So
But
and they'll adjust. But
we want to have
ideally,
the ideal, and I would say most parents I work with, and they're all high conflict, or there wouldn't be in parent coordination,
right.
or they could deal with themselves.
Yeah.
So they're all high conflict, but and most parents are able to discuss rules together and agree on rules.
Yeah.
It's more or less.
Right.
And that helps. I think that's helpful for a child because it's just the consistency makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but is it always? Of course not.
No, I know it's a work in progress. And and even for parents who aren't separated, um, they might not be, joining us on this podcast, but maybe they are. They have to struggle. None of us do it perfectly.
Mhm.
We do our best, and we have moments where we lose it, and then hopefully we apologize and we move on. We're all imperfect humans.
I'm so glad you said that, Rachel, because it is so true. And I've worked with parents who beat each other up and beat themselves up, and nobody's a perfect parent.
Yeah.
And we all lose it sometimes, and everybody gets frustrated. You had a bad day at work, and you come home and you're more angry, and you yell at your child, and whatever you do. But it's okay. That's
Yeah.
real life. Kids don't need to be so protected because they won't be able to deal with the real world.
Right.
The
Right.
world vicissitudes is up and down.
That's right. And everybody's going to have things in their lives that aren't what they wanted.
And as you said before,
Disappointments
not
and
perfect.
right. That's right. And that's okay.
And that's reality.
It's reality. That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
Well, Barbara, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to this discussion that we've had so far? I could talk to you for another hour, but
I think it's been a great discussion, and I think, I just love the name of your podcast because I really think it is all about the kids, and when you keep the kids in mind, you're better parents.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mantra.
right. So thank you so much for imparting your wisdom and
Thank
experience.
you for having me come.
And it's been a pleasure. And just keep your work going to help people keep their kids in mind.